Have you ever been sitting at a family table, surrounded by food, chatter, the clinking of glasses, yet felt like a ghost? I remember it clearly. I was 17, a plate of cold potatoes in front of me, when my father pushed back his chair, his voice slicing through the room. "You're just a leech!" He said it in front of everyone, my sister, my cousins, even my grandmother. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe it was a bad joke, but his face didn't change. Hard eyes, tight jaw. He meant it. I froze. Everyone else did too, until my sister giggled and changed the subject. But I heard it echo over and over. "You're just a leech." That was the first time I realized my father didn't just ignore me. He despised me. I wasn't the son he wanted. He wanted an athlete. I preferred books. He wanted a loud voice. I had silence. He wanted someone who looked like him, walked like him, thought like him. I was none of those things. So he labeled me leech, a parasite. Someone who would cling to his money, his name, his house, and give nothing back. And once he said it, he never stopped. Every time I asked for lunch money, it was, "Here comes the leech." Every time I sat at the dinner table, it was, "Did you earn that food, or are you just sucking us dry?" It became his favorite word. At first, it crushed me. Then it hardened me. Because the more he said it, the more I swore I'd prove him wrong. The summer after high school, while my friends relaxed, I worked double shifts at a grocery store. I saved every penny. I didn't tell anyone what for, but when I bought my first second-hand laptop with my own money, I cried. I taught myself coding. Late nights, long hours, countless mistakes. I turned errors into lessons, silence into fuel. I built small websites for local businesses, charging them barely anything just to practice. Then I built better ones. By the time I was 21, I had enough clients to quit the grocery store. By 24, I was running my own web design company. By 27, I had contracts overseas, employees under me, and more money than my father ever imagined. And still, I told no one. I let them believe I was struggling, still scraping by, because invisibility had become my armor. Meanwhile, my father's life was a show. He flaunted his car, his house, his connections. At family gatherings, he mocked me as usual. Still leeching? Still wasting time? Everyone laughed. I smiled and stayed silent. But silence, when sharpened by truth, becomes something dangerous. The turning point came on a humid summer night. I was driving home from a meeting when my phone rang. The name lit up the screen. Dad. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. His voice was shaky, desperate. "I need to see you, tonight." I drove over. When I walked into his house, I almost didn't recognize him. The proud man who had once towered over me looked small. Shoulders slumped, sweat on his forehead. He poured whiskey into a glass, but his hand trembled. Finally, he admitted it. Debts, gambling, failed deals, bad loans. The house wasn't his anymore. The car had been repossessed. The men he owed weren't patient. And then came the words I never thought I'd hear. "I need your help." I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. My father, the man who called me a leech for a decade, was now begging me for money. Begging me, the parasite, the nothing, to save him. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to shout. But instead, I asked one question. "Why me?" His lips tightened. He didn't want to say it. But he did. "Because you're the only one who can." The leech had become the lifeline. I didn't answer that night. I left him sweating in his empty house. On the drive home, my mind spun. This was the moment I had waited for, and I didn't even know what I wanted. Revenge? Mercy? Proof that I wasn't who he said I was? I stayed awake until sunrise, staring at my ceiling, remembering every insult, every smirk, every time he turned his back when I needed him. By morning, I knew I would help him. But not the way he thought. I called him later that day. "I'll meet you at the bank," I said. His voice cracked with relief. "Thank you, son." Son. The word sounded foreign on his tongue. At the bank, he looked around nervously. When I slid the paperwork across the table, his hands shook. It wasn't a check. It wasn't cash. It wasn't cash. It was a contract. A loan agreement, ironclad. With me listed not as his son, but as his creditor. He stared at me, mouth opening and closing. "You're joking." I looked him in the eye, steady. "No. You called me a leech. Leech means taking without giving. I don't do that. I never have. This isn't free. You'll pay it back with interest." His face turned red, then pale. But he signed. Because he had no choice. In the months that followed, he paid me in installments. At first, resentment burned in his eyes every time. But slowly, it shifted. To shame. To silence. For once, I was the one who held the power. And I didn't need to flaunt it. I just lived. My business thrived. I traveled. I surrounded myself with people who respected me, not because of my name, but because of what I built. My father faded into the background, smaller at every family gathering, his voice quieter, his arrogance gone. Until one night, years later, he called again. His voice was weaker this time. Age had caught up. So had regret. I was wrong, he whispered. You weren't the leech. I was. I drained you of love, of dignity, and you still saved me. For a moment, I almost believed he meant it. Almost. But then I remembered all the years of silence, all the scars his words left behind. So I simply said, I didn't save you, I saved myself, and I stopped letting your words define me. And then I hung up. That was the last real conversation we ever had. When he passed, the whispers at the funeral circled like smoke. He was such a strong man. He built so much. But I knew the truth. Strength isn't mocking others. Strength isn't cruelty disguised as honesty. Strength is surviving the fire of their words and choosing to build anyway. My father said I was a leech, but in the end he clung to me. And I let go. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't in proving them wrong to their face. It's in living so fully that their voice becomes nothing but an echo. And I walked away from his grave lighter than I had ever been.